So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. So as we talk about scaling AI, now we all know to scale AI, we need trained models, and for models, we need a lot of data. And there are two aspects to data when we think about it. One is localization of data, which is governments do not want their data to be sent out of their countries. And the second aspect is privacy. Nobody wants to share their personal information. So, for example, if we talk about healthcare, a healthcare company wouldn't want to give its data to a third company to do the analytics on. So, privacy localization is a big thing, and privacy also then percolates into cybersecurity because we want to make sure that our data is safe. Um, Professor Rao, in our conversations backstage, was mentioning that universities have sometimes have limited opportunities to innovate because they don't have access to a lot of big data sets, which large companies might have access to. So I just probably want to start with Sir, and your views on localization, privacy, and what can we do to make sure that doesn't hamper the fundamental AI research that we all wish happens in India.
I think data is the what drives the economy now, and I believe India is not leveraging its strengths when it comes to data. Right, we are not very good at managing the data that we are producing as a large nation. Go to any top tier hospital today. What do they do with that data? They generate tons of data, and that also that the data that we have in the country, if we can make it very structured and usable for all of these training purposes, is what we should leverage with all these countries when it comes to our bargaining power. Now if you yesterday or so the President Biden announced those controls on the hardware, right? You cannot buy GPUs right now beyond a certain numbers, and US is already restricting them to India now, right? So you in India, I used to think that let Reliance or some of these big companies set up a huge GPU, kind of a bank, and all of us can use it and pay money and all of that. Today, now as per the US protocols, you can't do that. Reliance cannot buy GPUs anymore beyond a certain point, kind of a thing. I think that is where we need to leverage our data. I think you trade data for the hardware. I think that is a bargaining power India has. Unfortunately, we are not using that to our advantage, and geopolitical situations will eventually dictate who will take a lead in all of these kind of areas, and India needs to utilize its strength. Our strength is data, and I think there we need many more policies, many more norms, many more ways to generate that structured data and then use it as a bargaining power. I think unless we do that, we won't be able to win the race, and we will just become consumers of these technologies, and I think we will struggle and suffer eventually. I think India has to put its act together when it comes to data, because that is our biggest strength.
And Sir, cybersecurity.
Yeah, so linking it to what Professor said, so data security and cyber security, very, very important topic, linking semiconductor product design. Let me tell you how. If you hear that 100% of or majority of the cameras in the country, surveillance cameras, all the data could potentially go to our one of not so friendly country, right? It is not going to be a pleasant answer, but that is potentially a big reality because the semiconductor chips that goes into those surveillance cameras, they come from that country. The software stack and the other peripheral components that come to build a camera, they come from that country, and that is the reason it's a huge threat on national security also. Imagine a scenario where every single move, the highest authority person in the country, whether it's a defense or the government, if that move is being monitored in that country, how dangerous it could be, right? Forget about a common man. So, but I think the realization is coming. Recently, government has notification that all surveillance camera, IC technology, camera technology should be indigenous. And I believe that is giving a lot of potential opportunities to startups, semiconductor startups, software startups to build that ecosystem where these cameras are sold in like millions and millions per year in high double digit. And that's a big opportunity for many industry players to come together and make it happen, right? We are also trying that. Today, every technology of that kind is all foreign. How we do that, there are different encryption technologies, there are different algorithms, both at the device level as well as at the product level, and that can be deployed. Obviously, you need some kind of a compliance that if a notification comes that every single surveillance camera that will be sold in the country should be made in India, right? From all aspects, immediately you will see the transformation in the country will start happening. So some kind of a bulldoze is also required when we are so much dependent upon imports on these areas. But as AI is going to get into our life more and more, this can be a huge threat on security front. Cyber security will come as very big, I would say, field from the talent perspective as well, where every single thing that we do, you will require a mandatory cyber security expert. Just like you need a lawyer in a company, you need a HR person in a company. That will be the need of the hour.
And are you bullish about the cybersecurity space?
Oh, it is. I'll give you a recent story I read, I think yesterday. French submarine generals and officials who are in nuclear submarines, which are supposed to be underwater for months on end, their identities were disclosed. How? Because they're all using a fintech app. And that became the source of leakage. What do you say to that? That's a new kind of explosion vector, right? The point is, coming back to the question of data privacy, right? Data privacy is key both for our human rights, for our right under the Constitution, as per our right of privacy, but it also enables people to have confidence to let their data be used safely. That gives you the data, that gives you the fuel to actually differentiate, right? Data is the new oil. You know what is the largest import of India? I mean, if you don't think crude oil, then you must know that if you account for all the embedded electronics, semiconductors is the largest import of the country, more than crude oil. Even though we hear about crude oil, if you include all the things that come into the country with the cost of the embedded electronics and separate the embedded electronics out, if you total that up, that is a bigger import for the country than crude oil. So semiconductors, of course, is fundamental. On the other side, data privacy, data localization is a way for the government to enforce, legal domain on the data, right? Of course, national security for confidential data, but what I do on a daily basis may not affect national security as much, but bringing that data in allows the government to enforce our laws apply to the data, right? That's the whole purpose of data localization, ownership and control. If that enables the economy or the people in the country to provide more data for better AI, better training, and better intelligent decision making, inference using those data, that is what the ancillary corollary benefit of privacy and localization is, apart from the national security elements, the constitutional rights under privacy. But of course, cybersecurity, just yesterday I was listening to a podcast by Nikesh Arora, Palo Alto Networks. He was talking about what vectors used to take days for a person to break through in cybersecurity. Now it's happening in hours with Gen AI enabled cybersecurity. Yes. On the same side, the same Gen AI can be used to create better security around the people who are trying to come in. So cybersecurity is going to be very key. And that is a place where we see a lot of companies trying to make inroads, a lot of different things being tried, and a lot of advancements will continue to happen in that space. It's not just a requirement for defense or national matters, but it's also a requirement for daily business. If your website security is hacked, all the financial systems collapse, right? If the bank security is hacked, all the financial systems collapse. So the whole economy depends on cybersecurity. And it's going to be a key area. We need to develop capabilities there, and we need to support our startups there, while at the same time making sure we just deploy the best and the latest technology to make sure we continue to operate effectively. But until we bring semiconductors and semiconductor capabilities inside the country, we will never be able to be self-sufficient in this matter. And by the way, it doesn't have to be the 3 nanometer latest TSMC or the Intel 1.8. Even the 28 nanometer that Tata is building, it's going to serve 90% of our applications. In fact, there's a joke I tell people, and I don't know if it's a joke, it's kind of half serious. If you can figure out when China is going to move on Taiwan, just before that, just buy all new appliances, because you're not going to get repairs for them once the war happens. The semiconductors will get short. Get your dishwashers replaced, your fridge replaced, anything that's old replaced. That's the kind of exposure your daily lives have.
But just to add to this point on cybersecurity, the quantum, right? The quantum technologies are now, quantum computers are, are already there, right? You can rent time on a quantum computer. One of the things that quantum computers do very effectively is breaking these cryptography kind of codes. And once quantum computers become available to countries, and the first casualty will be our defense establishments, all our systems will be open now, and that is the biggest worry. How do you quantum proof, right? Whatever cryptography algorithms you have is going to be a very biggest challenge. Is going to be a very big challenge right now. And I think when you talk about cyber security, quantum proofing, the security protocols that we have is going to be the next big thing now. India fortunately has invested quite a bit of money. There is a 4,000 crore quantum mission right now, but I think some of these need to become very focused in addressing some of these concerns.
Absolutely.
I just want to add
Yes,
to that.
please.
So PQC, as they say, post-quantum
Post-quantum cryptography.
cryptography, right? There is so much of work happening, and just to again put things in context, if all words computers are put together, today's computers, and they try to decode a lock, a crypto lock, a quantum computer potentially can do that in one day versus a whole day effort by these computers. That is the power of quantum computers, and luckily, as Professor said, India has taken a lead, but we need to again put the industry academia together to make it happen. We have from our company definitely are participating in PQC algorithm development with a couple of IDs. But I think this is the next future. If you have to have cybersecurity, you need to be compliant to PQC.
Supply chain resilience became a big thing after COVID, especially. I mean, it disrupted the supply chains of a lot of industries. But now, AI and the scale at which it is getting deployed is disrupting the semiconductor supply chain. And so, as Priyank said, we need to ensure that there is less reliance on import and more reliance on being self-sufficient. And I think the next section is going to focus on how India is becoming a manufacturing hub. And we also want to talk about the latest innovation that's happening in the semiconductor space.
Yeah. So like as Priyank, as you mentioned, right? So it is a like semiconductors are imported heavily, right? So what is there in India that the semiconductor industry can thrive in the age of AI? How can we build a next NVIDIA in India? Because as you have recently heard that NVIDIA has the market cap has just crossed every other company, right? So what is there that like we can do as a country so that the semiconductor industry takes a leap in India, for that matter, to drive the AI applications?
I will first give you what we are working towards as a country. There's a figure that is being talked about by Ministry of Information Technology and Electronics, and we are all aligned to that as India Semiconductor Mission. There is a $500 billion of total embedded electronics that is predicted that will be by 2027, 2028. Out of that, roughly 30-40% is going to be the semiconductors, right? We are talking about anywhere from 150 to 100 billion dollars of semiconductors. Right now, everything is being imported, right? As he said, 100%. Barring very, very small defense kind of things that may be done at the SCL Mohali facility that is our own, but that is very, very little, like fraction of a percentage. If this becomes, or if it is already today more than oil import, you can know the impact on the national fiscal deficit and many more inflation and other things. So what we are targeting at a tier level approach, how to make it indigenous. One is how to create the supply side of the problem taken care of. That is where Government of India launched this 76,000 crore manufacturing subsidy program, where four of our companies from Micron to Tata Electronics to another CG Power Group and Keynes Group. So four of these are starting. Tata is doing one fab, and other three are doing the OSAT, which is nothing but making the wafer and then testing and packaging the wafer, right? So that will take care of the supply side of the problem. Now, where the demand comes from, because one of the biggest fear we think from our company perspective, you may have all the best factories in the world to manufacture it, but who is going to feed them, right? And the running cost of a fab, which may take a $10 billion to make, is in multi-million dollars per day if they're sitting idle. So they need to be better running at 99% efficiency. And that is the reason it is such a, looks easy because government pays 70% of the capex today. 30% is borne by the company. But even 30% is a huge money, $3 billion to set up an advanced fab, if 7 billion comes from government, right? So how to keep the demand coming? For that, there are two tier things. One is all the tier one, like the likes of people who build the electronics for the end OEM. In case of automotive, Tatas or Mahindras or BMWs don't build their front end glamorous dashboards, right? All they give is, I need that much of 12-inch kind of a dashboard. It should have these many features. They tell some of the tier ones like Bosch or Continental, and India has equivalent number of companies today to build it for them. So these are the tier twos. Now, the tier ones of these go to semiconductor suppliers to provide that electronics, right? Now, today, India does not have semiconductor suppliers. So most of these Continental goes into the West where they get the semiconductor supply from a supply chain perspective. And that is where, we have a whole vacuum. Where China started, they started the other way around. So they have the applications level product development started first, and then gradually they moved into the IT and the semiconductors. Was the last 7 to 10 years of growth when they were literally choked by US not to supply those things, and they got, I would say, survival instincts got kicked in, right? That's where you see the transformation in China. I think we need to work on both the ends. We need to create the local demand by giving the incentives to these players that if your product is available at par with a global product, you will be given encouragement through whatever ways. It could be a tax incentives, it could be a government procurements as a preferred supplier. Same thing is happening in defense, right? Multi-billion dollars. India is the second largest import of weapons, right? Everything was imported. Now things are changing gears, right? Because they are saying local players will get encouragement, and that is where HAL and other companies suddenly taking off. Same thing we need now into the tier 3, which is semiconductors, which companies like ours, like L&T Semiconductor started last year, and now a lot of other companies may join the bandwagon. But to create indigenous semiconductors with the indigenous tier 1, you complete the supply chain loop. Then why Tatas or Mahindras are going to go outside, right? For automotive or any other industrial player will go outside. They have everything inside. And that is where a lot of these complete semiconductor ecosystem parks, where eventually the manufacturing is happening, the supply chain is all intact. And if the scenario planning that Priyank was mentioning, if it happens, we don't need to worry.
Exactly. And sir, as an extension of that thing, manufacturing, it's very important to have in India. What are your views on developing our own IP and our own fundamental innovation on the semiconductor side?
It's a very important thing. When we look at the semiconductor manufacturing, one of the best examples where India has done very well is automotive sector, right? 20 years ago, right, when we were all buying our first car, there were hardly any options available. Now, I am spoiled with options. If you go to market, you don't know what to buy category. Exactly, right? Why? And India is producing millions of cars, exporting parts, and Indian automotive sector has a presence in many countries now, over 100 countries I recently read, and that's indeed our largest manufacturing kind of a base right now. How did it all happen? It all happened through policies, through collaborations, that Maruti collaborating with Suzuki, establishing a plant and producing cars, others joined, and I think that is exactly how semiconductor thing is also panning out right now, which is good. So I think we have collaborations now setting up manufacturing. 20 years from now, I hope to see semiconductor manufacturing hit same levels as the automotive manufacturing. But one thing which we could have done better even in automotive sector, after all, we did not produce Teslas, right? We were doing cheap kind of a labor and then producing cost at a lower cost, at a lower price point, and then people came, set up manufacturing. So that price advantage was what India offered when it came to semiconductor, when it came to automotive sector. But we did not produce the Teslas and all of that, right? In semiconductors, today I buy chips made in Taiwan, right, or somewhere. and tomorrow I will buy the same chip which is made in India. It makes no difference. The same chip, exactly the same thing, IP is owned by somebody. How would it make a difference now? For Indian government, you are reducing the foreign exchange, and you are buying it in rupees now, because many of these things you don't have to import. So from a national point of view, and from a security point of view, locally manufactured, maybe you will have a slightly better control on what goes into that. I think those things I understand, but semiconductors, I think we need to do a little bit differently, because when automotive sector came, the startup culture was not very prominent in the country, right? That time startups were all unheard of. But now, India is the third largest country when it comes to startups. Now, can we encourage more startups in the semiconductor space, more on the product space, right? So, for example, I have a startup, I co-founded a startup which now sells explosive detectors to airports. Now we have a presence, NanoSniff is the company, at least a dozen airports in India use our technology. The IP is protected all over the world. We manufacture everything entirely in India, that's what NanoSniff does. And these are the kind of companies you need to have many more in the country, which own the IP, but which are in the product space. Now if you look at even the semiconductor example, there is what is known as the smile curve, right? The smile curve essentially shows that the largest profit margins that a company keeps, are the companies which actually design products. Look at Apple, right? Apple doesn't manufacture anything but designed in California, and so they design the entire thing, make a few prototypes, and then the entire manufacturing is done from all over the world. But Apple still gets to keep the highest profit margins, valued at $3 trillion, $3.5 trillion, the most valued company in the world, right? Whereas the ones who actually do manufacturing, the Foxcons of the world, their valuations are 70 billion, 60 billion kind of a thing. That is what is going to happen. India needs more product companies. India needs more companies which think of new product ideas. The manufacturing you do either in India or abroad, it really doesn't matter. Wherever you have a cheaper product available, component available, you get it from there, right? But you need more product companies in India, and then source components from anywhere in the world, and that is how you can build the trillion kind of companies. If you look at US, they have perfected this model excellently. 9 out of 10 most valued companies in the world today are in the US, right? And many of these companies, in fact all of these companies, do no manufacturing. All manufacturing done elsewhere, but 9 out of 10 most valued companies are in the US. The only one which is outside US is the Saudi oil company, right? Other than that, that's what it is. I think India needs to have more of these startups which own the IP, which think of complete products, and then that's how we become that Viksit Bharat and all of that. Otherwise, at the rate that we are growing, I don't think anything much will happen.
See, if it is the product is something that solves a particular customer or a user's problem. The one that is next to the customer always gets the maximum value grab, the maximum value in the value chain. Everyone behind them is solving the specification for that product. Who puts that product together is what makes the value. So the point that Professor Rao is saying is fundamental. We are supplying services, we should be part of the supply chain in all aspects. But to become self-sufficient and to become a leader, we have to be at the edge of where the product is there, which is solving a user, a customer, a company, whether it be a company, an individual, or a government's problem. And that's where the maximum value is always captured in the value chain. And that's where the new understanding of what is the new problem to be solved can come. The value chain behind them is critical for supply chain resilience. And some of them are fundamental technologies which can have a lot of value captured, like NVIDIA. But all the others are product companies. Yes. Apart from NVIDIA, in the top 10, and Berkshire Hathaway, that's a conglomerate of a different type. So if you exclude those two, and Aramco, 7 product companies. True. In the top 10 in the world in market cap. The other thing to understand is that there is, of course, critical technologies where supply chain resilience is required, whether it be energy, whether it be semiconductors, whether it be aerospace. These are some of the fundamental areas where there are biggest chinks in India's armor of capability within the country. And that is going to be important for, and I'm talking about fundamental aerospace. That goes into both aircraft as well as helicopters, as well as drones and all of that. So those kind of fundamental areas we need to, as a national strategy, improve. But on the economic side, on the market and the startups, they need to work on all of these. And the product demand, when it's there, then all the component suppliers will come. All the supply chain manufacturers, the Tata Fab will get continuous demand, and then they will be able to invest in the second one, because the first one is such a scare.
Yes.
They're worried about every day, if I don't have demand.
Yes,
They're worried.
it's going to fail.
Tata people are out in the country talking to various companies, including some startups I've talked to. What is your demand? What do you need? How can we give you? But once their first fab takes off, I'm sure they'll have so much demand that they'll go after many more.
And linking it to that, all these fabs that we are talking about, if we have more product companies, as Professor said, they are going to get so easy access to get them locally done. So it will solve both the problems of supply chain as well as the local ecosystem build up, right? Because then the chain can be much faster.
So a question for Sanjay sir, as we talk about developing IP, as Professor Rao mentioned, can you talk a little bit about the India story in the context of Fabless, please?
Yeah, so fabulous is actually the very exciting word for us, in particular as a L&T Semiconductors, because while rest of the Indian companies were going to build a fab, which is actually building the infrastructure to manufacture it, as we discussed earlier, we believe that the real value is building a product. And when you say building a product, it means working with customers on different applications that we discussed across automotive, industrial, healthcare, medical, and trying to find out what the real challenges are. Build a IP, then build a IC, which is integrated circuit or a system on chip, as we say, around that IP. That can be your unique differentiator. Now, you bring it to a level where everything from concept till the final design is done by you. As Professor says, the design, India does not have a design company as yet. Right? We are good in design services, but not in product design. So once you do that, you fetch maximum value for the country. And after that, it is up to you. You get it manufactured in an Indian fab, or if it is not ready, you get it manufactured in a global fab. Likely, government would like us to manufacture in an Indian fab because it helps in a lot of saving of import and the dollar to rupee related matters on fiscal deficit. But the real value is created when you design something. So just to give you a perspective, average chip that is sold, say $100, the value of design is roughly 70 to 80. Rest is manufacturing, packaging, testing. So you fetch maximum value out of a product if you design it. And you may or may not know, the top 10 semiconductor companies in the world, one of the name comes to your mind is Qualcomm. Yeah. It is a fabless company. Another big company called Broadcom, it's a fabless company. And that is the way we believe that to begin with, create a IP that belongs to India. Today, when we talk about the biggest core that is used or CPU that is used around the world, there's a company called ARM that is based in UK, of course, acquired by SoftBank later on, right? Who owns a Bluetooth IP, right? So point is, India does not own an IP as yet in semiconductors. And once you own the IP, you literally own the heart of the system. And that is what a fabulous story is. That is what we want to aspire.
Excellent. Very exciting times ahead, I believe. And just to converge the session now, maybe we can go to all of our panelists one by one. And any parting thoughts and any advice for startups or talent? And then one application area that excites you the most when it comes to semiconductors in here. So we'll start with you, sir.
Yeah. If you look at India today, one of the, in terms of numbers, right, India ranks third in the world when it comes to research output, knowledge generation. India is sixth in the world when it comes to IP filing, the patents and all of that, right? But there is not a single product out of India which has made an impact worldwide, right? And there is nothing, that has happened out of the knowledge generated here, where somebody converted that into a product and which has made a big impact. It has not happened, right? I think when it comes to innovation, where you utilize the knowledge or utilize this IP, do something for the society, we are ranked 39th, right? But even that 39th rank is also because of IT companies and e-commerce and all of that. A deep tech product kind of a company, which has made a big impact, hasn't happened still. And that is a gap right now that exists. How do we do that? For that, I believe academia, startup and industry that collaboration is very, very important. When you talk about the triple helix model and all of that, it was always academia, government, and industry kind of a thing. But I think a new model for India is being the third largest country, third largest nation when it comes to startups, academia, startups, and industry. Academia and industry collaborations haven't really taken off in this country, but startups can act as a glue, right? They understand the industry things, they understand the academic requirement, they all have come out of these same institutions. So I think that is one thing that we need to promote very aggressively in this country, to even build those IP based products, to build those more product kind of companies, the design kind of companies. Fortunately, India has also built a lot of design schools. Recently, somebody told me there are suddenly now 300 design schools in the country. 300, right? Many of them have opened in the recent past. So I think utilizing all that ecosystem that is building right now, I think we need to bring all these players together and then focus on the real problems, right? And build those startups which are focused on products, and then utilize all the services that are available. To me, one area that excites where lot can be done is agriculture, right? 45% of Indians, close to 50% are in a way make their living out of agriculture. It contributes only 15%, 16% to the GDP, and there you need lot of innovation. The future is all going to be precision agriculture, right? And there, how do you improve the productivity in a farm, right? And whereas you develop a technology, but farmers are not going to buy that because their average income levels are very low. So therefore, the big players, big companies aren't looking at that sector. But startups have a role to play there. We also need business model innovations there. I mean, so can you, cooperative societies, can you make these technologies useful for the farmer, make the farmer use them, improve the productivity, so that the farmers make more income, and with so many people dependent on agriculture, any impact you can make on agriculture will transform, the country's GDP and all of that. I think agriculture is one space where I believe there is a huge opportunity for India to innovate.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Sanjay, sir.
So I believe this is the decade or a century that belongs to India for sure. And within that growth journey that we all are going to see for next many decades, semiconductors is the right place at the right time, because sometimes you have the same concepts even 30 years back, 40 years back, they were into our college curriculum, many of the concepts, right? But when a technology gets viable and then it gives the optimal performance, optimal power dissipation, and optimal product usage, probably the era is now. That is why things are taking off. So I believe semiconductors, for everybody who is seeing it, this is the opportunity for our top talent in the country to take it as their career choice. And I'm sure for next 30, 40 years they will be very busy. Within that, I believe, although there is a scope everywhere, but energy as one segment, I generally believe a huge scope. Again, I was reading some data that the per capita usage of energy in India is at least 100x lower than the average per capita in US or Europe, right? So which means that energy generation, energy transmission, energy distribution, and energy consumption, on all four pillars, there will be huge opportunities, 100x waiting for what they exist today. And this could simply mean that from the renewable energy generation perspective, whether it's solar or a wind or many more sources, there will be a lot of semiconductors that will be going for sure. A lot of big companies are trying. I'm sure right now they are importing from China. I'm sure 10 years down the line they will be using local technology. Same is true for the transmission. So much of losses today that happen using the traditional technology, and big sizes of semiconductor equivalent devices that are being used, they will be converted into semiconductor, silicon carbide and GaN, and those kind of advanced semiconductor nodes that will miniaturize them from this room size transformer to probably a little, little this kind of which will be huge saving of power as well as saving of space and smart energy devices. Imagine our laptop chargers 10 years down the line were this big. Today they are that tiny because of the semiconductor technology. And semiconductor consumption, I mean energy consumption, everything that we consume from cell phone to refrigerator and all household goods, right? It's a smart home concept is going to thrive on energy utilization. So energy is my favorite segment these days because knowing the immense possibilities semiconductor can do, and it is least penetrated right now. That is why it is my highest interesting area to target.
Excellent. So we have agriculture, energy, and Priyank.
Well, so I think the important thing to come around to is everyone talks about India's future. The future is India's. I don't think anything is a given. We should not sit on our laurels or be too happy until it realizes. It's not a time to be complacent. But I do agree that it is the best opportunity that the country has ever had. We have reached a point where our government has enough funding and also, thankfully, the strategic insight to set policy which is long term. We have reached a point where we have economic heft as a country and as companies where we can go past short term thinking to slightly long term strategic thinking in a larger scale. I mean, a few companies could do it, but it's happening at a bigger scale. We have a startup culture that has made the entire generation feel more dynamic. I mean, yesterday at an IIT Delhi Venture Studio program that I am taking some courses on, there was a survey presented that 40%, 45% of the students want to do their own company. So we have a taker mindset to maker mindset coming around in the new generation. We have people in our diaspora all over the world who over the last 25, 30 years have built expertise and capabilities that they want to contribute back to India. I see of them working with, bringing semiconductor innovation, bringing other kinds of innovation to the country. We have a lot that has laid the foundation for what can be our century, or can be our decade at least. And I so wish it will be, and I'm rooting for that. What I have seen over the last 17 years of angel investing, more than 80 companies, we have gone from a time when the entrepreneur used to come and say, look, my parents think I'm not going to get married, I'm leaving an MNC job, but this has been done in the US, this has been done in China, I can do it in India. The first 10 years, 9 years or like that. Now they come and say, and I'm just doing a stereotype, right? Every day, never was it all one way, never is it going to be what I described now, but now they come and say, look, I can be a startup founder, it's cool. Even if I don't succeed, I have a good career that can be made. People value that. And I have found this opportunity in this value chain that I'm going to disrupt and make a change for the world. What Professor Rao said, we at Ion Alpha Fund also talk about that. Our advisors are head of the National Quantum Mission, the board chair, and part of the policy conversations. We also talk about being the product nation. So that is what I would advise entrepreneurs from India to do. Think more about creating new IP. The time is now coming where it's not just about funding startups and accepting startups. We have done that already. So that's the work of your predecessors who created the companies that have laid that ground. Now is the time to say, I can make a product, I can make IP, and IP can be semiconductor IP, IP can be agriculture IP can be a consumer brand IP, right? How many consumer brands from India are known outside the country, world? I mean, any kind of IP, because that's where the maximum value is. Think big, be bold, and the country is now getting ready to stand behind that and believe in it. Earlier, we only liked imported. That is going away. The number of new brands, new generation people are trying. The number of IP Indian companies are thinking about trying. And I feel this particular opportunity set, the space that I find very promising. It has impact on all that we talked about, which is combination of mechanical and electronics, whether it be smart motors, whether it be smart heat exchangers, whether it be agricultural implements, whether it be robotics inside the house. The combination of AI-enabled using semiconductors combined with mechanical devices is what we use on a daily basis in every aspect of our life. And that's where there is huge opportunity for efficiency, huge opportunity for new value to be created beyond just the digital tools that and the content creation tools that we are currently talking about. So I feel that's a massive massive opportunity set, and it can solve problems for agriculture, for energy, for automation in factories, Industry 4.0, building efficiency, energy efficiency in various fields, all of that. And that's where I feel I see some of the most interesting innovations coming out.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you so much, Professor Rao, Sanjay, and Priyank, for being a part of the show today. And I'm sure our audience will get to learn a lot of things. And I certainly, for one, had fun. So thank you so much for your time, and hope to get together again sometime soon in the future. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.